Let's open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Questions from the public?
Also, Commissioner, just in addition to that, so we have a bulk fuel application as well that they have to fill out if they have something like this. And our local fire inspector also asks for a mitigation plan.
We have a gentleman in the back with his hand up. If you'd like to come forward to the podium and state your name for the record, please.
All right. Joshua Gardner. Currently living in the Centennial Bluffs division just south of that. So I was more or less curious if we were to go around with a petition against this, any citizens or residents in the area, could we put that forward to you guys? Or would that just be a waste of my time?
So public comment is always forwarded to the commission. In this case, it would go, if it was to move forward, the petition or public comment letters would be collected and submitted to the Board of County Commission. That's the next stage. So they do consider that. We don't have a process where you have to get a certain percentage of negative votes. That's not how we do things here. But I know the commissions do take public comment very seriously in their decisions.
Gotcha.
Is there some particular issues that you have questions on or you'd like to raise tonight?
Well, I'm working in the oil field and being a truck driver and stuff, I know how it gets out there, and they say they'll take 49th, but let's be real, if it's easier to come from 141st, they will. So just thinking in the scheme of things and being a father, kids growing up, learning how to drive and all that, just thinking truck traffic, there's residents, I know there's elderly residents on that main road, just trying to avoid just thinking ahead into the future, because if the town keeps growing, which is great, I'd rather see neighborhoods and stuff like that versus oil field when we can move a little more outside. So there's plenty of other areas he can put his fuel tanks. So just thinking realistically.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment? Kara, did you have a question? Would you come forward, please? State your name for the record. I know it's a long walk.
No, I'm sorry, Karen Novak. So are we talking about the Lund Oil place? Okay, sorry we're late, but that's as soon as we could get here. That's what I wanted to know. Are we talking about the Lund Oil place? Okay, so I followed a driver down the other day that turned off the highway, and he didn't slow down turning off the highway, and he was changing gears as he went by us. So I followed him down there, and his boss was there too, and I told him, you guys cannot drive 50 going right by our place. He was empty. That part is good. But when they come off the highway, they are not really slowing down, and they're changing gears as they're going down that slope. And I told him I was not happy. And he did apologize, but, I just told him I was not happy.
Karen? Is there a lot of truck traffic that you're seeing on that road, or just an incidental one every once in a while, or is there quite a bit now?
Do you want my honest opinion? Okay, my honest opinion is we do not see many of the Lund trucks go by. Not many at all. But when they do go by, they're going by fast. But I'll be honest with you, we see Brand X down the road, and they speed. You know who I'm talking about. And I've talked to them, and they don't slow down whatsoever. But I'll be honest, the Lund ones we do not see very often. But we see the oil tankers, the other one is it the Bumblebee one? They speed a lot. The Continental ones, they don't go quite so fast. But the Bumblebee ones and some others do.
Karen, as long as we've opened the door to speeding out there, as you're well aware, we talked at our annual meeting about the speed limit out there and changing them
Yeah, we need the signs up, right?
Right, and the last time I checked, the county was still 2 months behind on signs. There's only one sign man for the whole entire county, so at a certain point, we're just gonna have to go do it ourselves. And we've already done that on some other spots. Okay?
Like I said, if I think they're going by really fast and I see them consistently like that, I'll go chase them down. And I have done that, but some, like I will admit, the one guy did apologize and say he was sorry. The other company that's down there that speeds, and I've chased them down, that doesn't seem to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. Kurt, do you want to come up and speak to the application, please?
Good evening, Kurt Sternagel. As far as the the fuel tanks, we're gonna add them, we would like to add them along the east side of the property and towards the north. Obviously, if we get to that point, we'll file an SPCC plan, so for spill containment and control. Likely in the next 2-3 years, probably will only be 3 tanks there, but in case plans change, I didn't want to tie you guys up again.
How about to the traffic flow?
Well, as she stated, we're trying to keep it on 49th. I mean, we'll bring empty trucks in there, and I'll send an empty truck out on 141st if it's a safety concern that they need to cross 85 and go north. It's easier for them then to go up 141st and get on the truck bypass.
One thing I would add, just as a blanket statement, so if this does get approved and there is a lot of citizen complaint in the area, this could always be brought back and the CUP can be revoked.
We're not looking to build a huge terminal out of that property. And to the east of us, a little bit to the south, there's one twice as big, 3 times as big as we'll ever be, where Prairie Fuels is. And just to the north of us, MVP has one with more tanks than we'll likely ever have.
Any other questions? Okay, if we need you, we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Bill?
Well, my understanding is this is for an additional 8 tanks on that property. And last night at the research station dinner, we sat as a neighborhood and had a little discussion about this, and visiting with the neighbors, we were all kind of in agreement that we were all there before any of that, those of us on 141st on the north end there. And Horizon has been, directly east of us and has been there for a long time. And then Missouri Valley came in down, and, the issue we had with them on the drainage that had a problem last year that cost a bunch to get corrected on that. And continue going south and back. It used to be Beams down there, but now it's not. And now Lund's coming in there on 49th. You're looking at, or I guess we were discussing last night, in approximately a half mile, maximum a mile area there, more propane storage than there is in practically the rest of the state, you would think, on that. And if you look almost in the middle of that, right behind Owen Tool, there are 6 arsenals spaced about 50 feet apart. And they have I think it's an 8-foot soil berm protecting the Highway 85 and protecting the south and the north of that kind of as it comes around there. But those of us that are west of that, if something were to go wrong, and we all know that accidents happen and lightning strikes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, our section is going to be a hole in the ground and we'll have no worries about it. So at what point is enough enough? we've given a lot. You know, and the tank that they put in there is a pretty good sized tank. And we were at the meetings, you know, last year on that and talked about the traffic. And like I said, predominantly all we see of theirs would be the empty trucks heading south. And not an issue with that on the road, so on, other than the speeding. But looking at, like the gentleman who was speaking, we came in here about safety overall, you know, and I'm not looking at the people that live in the East View subdivision or the Bluff subdivision down in there, but all of this is, it's explosive stuff. And I know we have safety rules and regulations on that, but again, when is enough enough? And granted, is it safer having everything together like this, or would we be safer having some of it east of town and some of it north of town and spread it out a little bit, so if you get a lightning strike on an arsenal, you don't eliminate us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Can we zoom out a little bit and look at where their project lies in relation to the residential area?
Can you turn the zoning map?
They're about centered between the subdivisions of 85 and.
Just for reference, MVP's up in here. And Prairie Fuels is down in here, is that correct? And then Horizon's way up here. Right up. Any other questions? Kurt, do you want to speak to safety at all on this deal?
As far as it being several plants that close together,
Well, we have, we talked, when you were here on the propane tank, we talked about the safety of the propane tank. And then how does that relate to diesel fuel and methanol? If you would, please.
we'll ground all them tanks so that they'll be, they won't accept lightning, it'll go directly in the ground.
Karen, would you repeat your question loud enough for, I couldn't hear it.
Asked him what would happen if lightning hit that big tank.
Okay, thank you.
Typically, all them tanks are grounded with ground rods from the top of the tank to prevent that from happening.
How about the diesel fuel?
All them tanks will be grounded.
Mr. Chair, is that a requirement that they be grounded? You said typically, but is it a requirement or?
No, I don't know that it's North Dakota required, but we have always grounded all the tanks just to prevent any lightning strikes. And the containment that we will have for the 3 tanks that we plan on putting in will hold 100,000 gallons, which is twice the size of one of them tanks. So just in case something would leak.
Okay, anybody else have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, I do have another question. You're requesting on your CUP 8 tanks, but that it says in the conditions that if they aren't installed within 18 months, then that's no longer in effect. And you're talking about putting in like 3 right now?
I believe the conditions say if the project isn't started within 18 months, is that correct?
Okay, is that what that means? Not that all 8 have to be installed, but what if they put 3 in and then don't bother to put any more in for 18 months?
Yeah, so as long as like Mr. Stereo said, as long as the project is started, then within 18 months, then they could wait a few years and they wouldn't have to come back and reapply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I close the hearing? Hearing none, I'll close the hearing. Turn it over to the board.
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of the request contingent upon staff comments, but I would like to add to the Planning and Zoning Division comments and an amendment to number 4 to include primary access must be taken from 49th Street Northwest. I would also like to add traffic associated with the project must be operated within established speed limits, and make that a condition of the permit, and have the county watch it hard. If it starts to become an issue, we review the permit.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Shane?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes?
Adam?
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 3, please.
Next on the agenda is LU-0090-21. Mr. Dolbeck is requesting a variance from the required minimum building setbacks for urban residential zoning districts for certain lots within the Windsong Country Estates subdivision. These properties are currently zoned urban residential. Within your packet, it will have a map outlining the lots that Mr. Dolbeck is specifically looking at setback reduction. So the request is for front building setbacks to be reduced from 50 feet to 25 feet from the property line. The reason for this is there's a pipeline easement, and you cannot build within easements. This is a significantly large pipeline easement. I believe it's 100 feet wide, so it's making those lots pretty much unbuildable without that reduction in front setbacks. So that's for the lots that are being reduced from 50 feet to 25 feet. Also, the variance is including a request for a reduction from 133 feet, which is a requirement of all section line in township and state and county roads. There's a building setback for those major arterial roads. His request is from 133 feet to 75 feet for lots 6 through 8 and lot 29 in block 2 of this subdivision. Typically for setback requirements, this would be done administratively and this wouldn't come before your commission. However, these are significant enough in a reduction that they have to go through the public hearing process. That's why they're in front of you today. We went out to the site and we took some pictures. There are significant easements throughout this site in terms of drainage. There's pipeline, which just makes it a little bit more difficult for development. We did reach out. There should be township letters coming around. We also got those late. That's why they're not in your packet. They were listed as undecided with no comment. So I reached out to the township, and basically they were concerned with building on top of drainage easements. Those drainage easements are identified on the plat, so planning and building departments would never approve a house to be built within the drainage easements. If there is a problem with drainage, before those houses get built, our county engineer is gonna go out there and look at it. This subdivision was approved with a stormwater management plan as well. So we know to the best of our abilities where there's gonna be water within the subdivision. And that, just relaying that to the chairman, he seemed more comfortable after our conversation.
Any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
Sam, when this was all platted, the easements were already in there, correct? So it was platted with consideration to easements already.
Correct.
So why are they asking for changes now if they knew it was going in?
So this was platted before our ordinance changed, and the setback, the building setback requirements have changed since then. So I believe when they platted this, it was 25 feet of a front building setback, and then our ordinance, our new ordinance, the 2015 ordinance, says that it has to be 50 feet back in the front setback. Also, this has kind of been like a phased project for Mr. Dolbeck, so I think he's kind of getting to these lots now and looking at developing and kind of realizing that he's running into some development issues. And those lots are along, the ones that have the big pipeline easement are along the eastern edge. So those bigger lots, but that pipeline easement is all along the eastern side of those lots. So it's making the buildable area pretty small. And you can kind of see it in your packet, there is a copy of the plat. It's called Windsong Country Estates. It's kind of hard to see, but it's shaded along that eastern edge, and that's all the unbuildable area.
Any other questions before we open the hearing? Okay, I will open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public?
Good evening. My name is Greg Demme. I represent Enbridge, which is one of the companies that has not one, but two pipeline easements through that eastern edge. Most of those easements, as the member mentioned, were there before this development was platted. There is actually a third pipeline from another company just to the east. We have had discussions for the last 6 to 7 years with Mr. Dolbeck about our concerns about building on these lots. Our concerns involve not only those easements, but also the overhead power line easements, which run just east of that road there at the front of the lots. Obviously, the power company could have their say, but that will be a significant impact as well to building. We do have a meeting on site set with Mr. Dolbeck on Wednesday, July 28th, to see if there's some kind of solution here. But we do, at any rate, have great concern about what could actually be built on those lots, as well as how much information the property owners will be told about what they can and can't do on those pipeline easements, including building any other permanent structures, propane tanks, which would probably be needed since I don't believe that area has natural gas, any sheds, fences, all kinds of things like that would not be able to be built across those easements.
How wide is your easement across that back?
So we actually have two easements. The easement of the western line, I'm sorry, I didn't bring a diagram to show you. I can provide one afterwards by email if that would help. The western pipeline, which would be the closest to the road, It's 50 feet from that line's location to the west of the line, and then there's an overlapping easement, but it also extends to the right to the back of the lots. And then there's another overlapping easements that's even wider. One of the things that we had thought about, although we're still not sure whether and how this would work, would be to adjust and more of an offset on our easements so that more of the easement was on the east side than on the west side. The difficulty with that now, though, is that there is a third pipeline, another company's pipeline that sits to the east of ours. And so that would pretty much eliminate that from being a possibility. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, but they also, if you go north to those middle two lots right there, the lines and the easements cut in significantly closer to the road.
Yeah, and just for clarification, those lots would be completely undevelopable. If there is an easement that's covering 90, I mean, it looks like from the plat, it covers almost 90% of that lot. There would be no possibility for any structures to be built over an easement. The county just wouldn't approve those buildings.
Sam, I can't read on my map. How wide are them lots?
I'm not sure this plat has dimensions. Lots. It just says the acreage. I don't have the width for those lots.
Here's some questions. If you have a 50-foot easement and we got a 25 easement in front, you know, we're using up 75 foot of the lot already. That doesn't give you much to build on anyway, does it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so the variance is for, so it does include lots 14 through 18. However, there are lots within there that it just wouldn't apply to. I think that he was just looking for a reduction in all of them to make it easier in his proposal. And then block 6, lots 6 through 8 on that western side, this is also included in that. He just kind of wanted to lump it all together into one variance request.
Somehow it just doesn't seem like a good idea to put residences on top of pipelines.
And
I mean,
we-
there wouldn't be right on top of them, but from the size of these lots, the whole back of the lot is going to, I mean, there's 2 pipelines under it and one next to it. And I understand that a developer might like to be able to develop each lot, but if the pipelines were already there when he bought the property, that ought to have gone into his planning, I think.
Definitely.
Is the applicant here?
I don't see him.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I don't know what the power line easements, how they read as far as what the right-of-way width is on that, but moving the home construction closer to the road, you know, lowering that setback requirement might put the housing development in violation of the power line easement. I can't say that for sure, but just looking at an aerial photo, it could be an issue.
Okay, thank you so much for coming up. Anyone else wish to speak to this issue? Third and final time. I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the board. Questions, thoughts? How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to deny your request. I mean, the easement was here when it was platted. They knew it was there. It's not like it was a surprise to them. When you take all that land away from both easements and the power line, I just don't think it's buildable ground. in my opinion. So I'm gonna make a motion to deny.
And a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, please. Sam, a comment?
Can I just ask a quick question? Yes, so the Enbridge pipeline are only for lots 14 through 18 in Block 6. And then there are lots 6 through 8. So if you can kind of see the map, they're in the blue. There's those ones. That has the section line setback requirement. And then the northern lot to 29, that also has the section line setback reduction. So those are kind of different, even though it's lumped into one request. Even though the ones that you're kind of more referring to, 14 through 18, that is the one with the pipeline nearby / underneath. So I didn't know if that you wanted to change that, or it's just point of clarification.
Louise, did you have a question?
I just said if it's all under one application, I mean, and the information that we're hearing just within the power lines, the easements, it makes sense to deny, and if he wants to reapply for the 2, could he come back and do that?
Yes, they would have to start the process all over again.
But this is just the first stop.
Correct. They still can go to the Board of County Commission, or yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually have a problem with the ones where it's a section line setback. It's the ones with the pipeline and the power line that I think is an issue for the buyer and just not a smart idea to put a residence there.
The problem I have with the section line, Sherrill, is with there being development out there, what if they keep developing the other direction? Across the section line, now you don't have the setback from both sides, that you're requiring from everybody else. And that's the only thing I had, so that's why I just want to leave my motion the way it is for the whole works and then come back again.
I appreciate separating them out because through these hearings, we hear from the public, we hear about the power lines, because there's not something in here saying the power lines. So it's a good chance to understand the situation more. So if we deny it and he wants to move forward on the other 2, I would feel more comfortable getting full understanding and scope on the other 2 before just passing them through.
The question would always come to the county when the county would ask for a further setback than the 66 feet of the section line. And why do they need it and why are they taking it now? And the answer has always been, because it's the only time you can get it. And if you're going to need it in the future, or even if you might need it in the future, if you don't get it at this point, you'll never will get it again, unless you go into condemnation, and nobody wants to do that.
When I go back to my original comment, it was plotted this way. They knew it when they plotted what size the lot was going to be. So it isn't.
Well, Wayne's here. We could drag him up here for some comments if he'd like, or he can just stay glued to his seat if he'd like.
Yes, these are township roads, but they're on the plat. There is a 75-foot right-of-way coming off of the section line. And so what you're really doing is the building setback and the right-of-way line would be the same. And so they could build a house right on the right-of-way line.
Ready for the question? Roll call, please.
Louise,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Shane,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is LU-0093-21. This is a request from Mr. Rintamaki for a zone change to rural residential and a variance from the minimum lot size required for rural residential zoning districts. The proposed lot will be 1 acre. They're also working through the minor subdivision process currently. So this one, Raphael, and if you don't mind zooming out. So this one is a little bit complicated because it is so far away from any dense development. So we have kind of no other choice but to put it into that rural residential zoning classification. It wouldn't make sense to be in an urban residential. It is not anywhere near any urban development. However, it is proposed to be 1 acre. This was a request from the applicant, personal, financial reasons for this. So 1 acre is the proposal. So that is where the variance request comes from. We have a limit on the minimum lot size for rural residential zoning districts, and that's 5 acres. So this request is for 1 acre. Pretty straightforward. They're putting the 1 acre boundary around this for a residential development. And our only comments is to adhere to the zoning and subdivision ordinance as well as to complete the minor subdivision process. The plat is included in your packet, and Mr. Rintmaki is in the audience if you have specific questions.
Any questions from the board for staff before we open the public hearing?
The blue outline we're showing, Sam, cuts kind of right through the middle of a building.
Yeah, so Raphael, you might even be able to speak to that. Our maps aren't always super accurate. Yeah.
Mark, I know you're familiar with this area, and it's a long ways from here to there when you're drawing it. So I think they got really close, considering how far away this is. Okay, let's open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Is the applicant here? Just you, Ed? Is there anything you'd like to add to the mix?
Ed Rintmaki, 49th Latitude Land Survey. Sam pretty well outlined what the plan is there. It's a young couple. They're started out farming, and his parents own all the property around that. Be Government Lot 3, Government Lot 2, Government Lot 1, and then the east half of the southwest. And then I think they own in Section 2 there also. But like I said, it's a young couple starting out farming. They want their own place, and of course, financially, I think, is what the restriction is on acreage. I talked to them about getting, increasing it to a 5-acre parcel, but, just from the financial standpoint, it would work best for them to go this route, and it's roughly 1.3 acres there. And there is an existing house kind of in that little jog, which is his grandmother's place. And I did survey that, and my layout of the lot ensures that there's no encroachment into setbacks for either residence. There's plenty of room there. So if you have any further questions, I can answer if needed.
If there's no other comments from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing. Members of the commission, questions, discussion? What are your wishes?
Mr. Chair, I move for approval with staff comments.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Adam. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Adam,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Shane,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Sherelle,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, motion carries.
We ended up getting a lot of comment after we submitted the staff reports this week, so sorry about that. I know. Next on the agenda, we have LU-0095-21, Mr. Kirby, on behalf of Lakeview Developments LLC, is requesting a zone change to urban commercial for a proposed 2-acre parcel that is currently within the urban residential zoning district. Another zone change within this project to light industrial for an existing 6-acre parcel that is currently zoned residential, and a conditional use permit for mini storage on that lot that would be rezoned to light industrial. So a little background on that. So conceptually, where the cursor is right now, if you can see it on the screen, that is the parcel that's being proposed as light industrial with a conditional use permit for mini storage. So currently, it was being used for a mobile home park. The applicant has been made aware that that would have to all be removed, and obviously they're on board with that because this is their proposal, is for mini storage units. So all of those homes would be removed and the utilities would be removed. If you're going east, that property right there, that's currently zoned commercial. That will be updated through our staff comprehensive update to urban commercial. The proposed use for this lot is retail shops, so they're going to have a few retail shops in that parcel. There is currently a model home on there because their original intention for this area was to be a big residential subdivision. So they'll have to remove that model home. As you move east, the urban residential. So this is a very large parcel. They will just be carving out that 2 acres down towards the other commercial. Yep, so right in there. And that will be rezoned to urban commercial. That's on a part of the request today. That will be used for a convenience store and a gas station. So just a little bit of the proposed use outline, visually speaking. They're also working through the re-subdivision process, and this is kind of, that separate process will go to the Board of County Commission for approval, but through that process, we're going to request a lot more, basically information for people who are gonna service this area. So we'll get letters of intent, we'll get road plans, we'll get maintenance agreements, for the roads, construction, and then long-term maintenance of the site. So that's kind of a separate issue. Here today, we're just kind of conceptually talking about the proposed uses on these 3 lots. So in front of you, what was passed out, we had been talking with the North Dakota Department of Transportation for this area. The applicant's gonna have to perform a traffic analysis study for this area because 1804 is a busy highway. The applicant will most likely, if not absolutely, require deceleration lanes for people turning into this complex. And then in speaking with the township, they also, as you can see, had concerns about the roads, the internal roads, as well as 1804. All of that is going to be covered in the re-subdivision side of things. Like I said, we're talking with DOT, and our county engineer is going to be heavily involved in this process as well. We didn't receive any public comment from the area, but we do have a list of 10 requirements that we would place on the land use side of things. We're going to have another list of requirements that we place on the re-subdivision side of things, but these 10 are simply for the land use. The applicants are in the audience if you have specific questions for them.
With all that discussion, I lost my place. We'll open the public hearing and ask for public comment. It's from the public.
Eric Kirby, Kirby Engineering. If there's any questions, be glad to answer them, but we've been in front of planning and zoning before for the subdivision of the same property, and it got denied, so we've re-engineered this to have the storage units, retail, and then a C-store with a gas station.
Any questions for Mr. Kirby?
So your mini storage is,
It's
oh,
gonna-
excuse me, I got it, yeah.
It's gonna be storage units, basically geared towards boat storage, RV storage, and a little bit of mini storage.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Rick. Anyone else? Third and final time. Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing, turn it over to the commissioners. Questions, comments?
So if this is approved, the state has to approve access in and out before anything moves forward, is that correct?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Is there any assurance that the state will modify that road to put a turning lanes, so that it isn't a traffic issue?
I can answer that. I'm Jared Reed, I'm representing Lakeview Development as well. And we did, when we were planning for the subdivision the first go-around, we did do the traffic study, and the OT required us to put in a deceleration lane, a turnout lane. And so I think at this point, we just need to go back to DOT and get them to update, their opinion on that, which we're, going to do.
Any questions on that comment? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, turn it over to the commission. What are your wishes?
Just a point of clarification, if they go through the re-subdivision process, do they come back in front of us to approve that, or is that through someone else?
So the re-subdivision is just, they get approval from the Board of County Commission, so it goes straight to the board.
Anyone else?
Just for a point of clarification too, this one flies a little bit more under the radar than a major subdivision, which is what they were originally proposing with the big residential subdivision. So anything under, or 5 or 6 lots, anything under 6 lots, would not have to go to planning and zoning for just a subdivision, but anything over 6 lots would go to planning and zoning.
Mr. Chair, I'm excited to see the project go forward because Trenton is somewhat of an underserved community as far as retail and commercial development. A lot of those residents in that community have to go a long way for some of that, some of those services. So I would move for approval of the application contingent upon staff comments and the action by the North Dakota DOT.
Thank you, Chris, and a second.
I would second that.
Thank you, Sherelle. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mark,
Yes.
Sherelle,
Yes?
Chris,
Yes.
Shane,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have LU-0098-21. Mr. Rentmaki makes another appearance on the agenda on behalf of Leland Hovey. They're requesting a variance to remain agricultural for a proposed 7-acre parcel. So this project is also working through the minor subdivision. There is an existing water depot that has a conditional use permit on this property. Basically, they're just subdividing around that water depot. The remainder parcel has been used for agricultural purposes. So they're just simply wanting to separate the two uses permanently through a subdivision. Because it's under 7 acre, or it's under 40 acres, we couldn't allow it to remain in the agricultural zoning district without a variance.
Any questions before we open the hearing?
Sam, what is the water depot? Is that under a CUP or how's that?
Yeah, so a water depot has a conditional use permit in agricultural zoning districts.
So just that little parcel will have the CUP on it if this gets approved?
So they're actually subdividing, it shows kind of what it would look like in the future. That would just be its own separate parcel. And then the remainder would have that pad on it, but that's regulated through NDIC. And then the rest would just be farmed.
So if the CUP goes away on the water depot, what happens to that little parcel then?
It can get reclaimed, it can get resold. It just exists as a variance to remain in the agricultural zoning district, so the next person who buys it's lucky enough to get to use it as an agricultural parcel.
Sam, are there different owners with this? I don't understand what they're doing here.
So the owner of the water depot, and Ed might be the best person to speak on behalf of this, but the owner of the water depot is different than the person who farms the property. Yeah.
But who owns the land under the water depot?
The Hovey, Leland Hovey, and then the Lalum is in charge of the water depot. Yeah, we would just have to dissolve, probably. No, thank you.
We're thinking there should be, if you got more than two, you gotta bring donuts or something to the meeting, shouldn't you?
Well, when you're talking about the old ordinance, maybe we ought to go back to that and I won't be here so often.
But remember, you're getting paid to be here.
Yeah, but I am a private property rights person, so. But to answer the questions, Dallas Lalem has ownership of the water depot and he's leasing that ground from, and I understand Leland Hovey is his relative. I don't know if they're cousins or what. Of course, they're both getting up there in years and this is something they've talked about for some time and they just want to move forward now where Leland, the family trust has agreed to sell this roughly 7 acre tract with the water depot to Dallas. So they have separate ownership. They're not. So somewhere down the road, the family trust doesn't have to deal with the issue of, you know, the water depot and who owns it, lease agreements, you know, whatever problems may arise from that, so. I don't know if you have any other questions or. And I guess I would just restate, like Sam already mentioned, the remainder of that tract of land will remain as ag farming, and I think there might be some pasture ground there too, so.
The reason I asked was, as I was trying to remember if this was one of the ones that, where they had moved the water depot out to the highway at the, just to make it a, you know, take the pressure off that road that was going by Red Mike and everything else. It was a really nice thing when it moved out to the highway.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have any knowledge of that, so. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Any other questions? Third and final time. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Turn it over to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve with staff comment.
And a second.
A second.
Thank you, Louise. Further discussion?
I don't think we've, at least I don't recall us doing an ag zone in a small acreage. And if we do this, we really are setting a precedent that other folks can come in and want their small acreages called ag too.
Well, I think we set ourselves up when you got a commercial adventure on an ag land a long time ago when we did these water depots. So I think it's kind of nice to separate them out where you've got a parcel with a CUP and it's away from the rest of the agriculture area.
But I thought that was the advantage of the CUP is that we left it as ag, and we didn't have to cut it up into small pieces and rezone it. We just leave it as ag. So now we're going to cut, because we've got lots of water depots, are we going to be doing this all over?
The only comment that I would have is if the use were to ever change, that would have to be updated to an appropriate zoning district. So if there's, I think, there's a structure out there, so if the building were to be used for some kind of industrial use, they wouldn't be able to remain in the agricultural zoning district. They would have to come up to some kind of industrial or commercial zoning district. But yeah, as it currently stands, it's a 7-acre agricultural parcel.
What prevented you guys from before on allowing things, like what's the problem with allowing that?
Well, I don't see a problem with having the CUP on ag. I mean, that's permitted use, and we've got them all over the county. I just think it would be kind of odd to end up with if they pull the water depot out, you've got a 7-acre ag sitting in the corner of a, I don't know, 130-acre ag or whatever the rest of it is.
But it'll still all be ag. It just could have a different owner in there is the only thing. You know, they'd be different.
So then if it would go to any other use, something else would have to be required, a zone change, or it would have to become something different.
Yeah, correct. I can't see this property being reclaimed to ag. I mean, it's, if you're familiar with it, it's all hard surfaced for the most part, and there's a big structure on it. So next time that they change use or owners, the CUP would be voided, and it would have to be updated to an appropriate zoning district.
So there's a fallback. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Louise,
Yes.
Shane,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Sherelle,
No.
Mark, Adam,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, motion carries.
Moving down into old business, Ed is on the agenda for a request for a zone change to rural residential for a proposed 21-acre lot. So as you recall from the last meeting on June 17th, Planning and Zoning tabled this in order to obtain further clarification regarding the comment from the township. Township had recommended denial at the time that they were alerted to this, and it was because residents in the area were not in favor of this subdivision. This subdivision is to create 2 parcels from the existing parent parcel. It is that flag-shaped lot. Commissioner Kalile, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but you had followed up with the township, and I have as well, and they're standing by their original recommendation.
Well, I did have a phone call from Rick Sorensen yesterday. And he had stated that it was their understanding that at this point, maybe Ed can talk to this, that there was only going to be 1 home there and then it was going to be changed to a 7-acre parcel. Ed, does that sound familiar?
I guess I talked with with my client yesterday, and he had mentioned that, I don't know if he had talked to you or.
No, I have
he
not talked to
mentioned
him. I only
that you
spoke
had
with Rick Sorensen.
conversation with Rick Sorensen, and his understanding was that the township was in approval. Now, when they understood that the rural residential zoning was strictly for the 21-acre parcel, I'm not aware of anything changing it to a 7-acre tract. But it is for one single residence on the 21 acres
And the residence is for?
for my client, John Ergens.
So that would be Tom's son, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, that jives with what Rick had said.
okay,
So they don't object to the one residence
yeah.
for him. What they were afraid of is that there would be a number of residences, and that was the concerns of everyone around there.
Yeah, no, and I think that maybe there was some confusion when the letter went out initially for the agenda. I think I didn't see the map, or I don't remember looking at it specifically, but I think the whole parent parcel was shaded as part of the rezoning. Because I got a call from John after his mom and dad received notification of this zone change, and they questioned, well, why is the whole parent parcel being rezoned? And I said, well, that's actually not correct, that should have been solely for the 21-acre tract to be rezoned to rural residential. The remainder of it, as you can see, is farmland, irrigated farmland, and which is what it's going to remain, so.
Okay, thank you.
And that is correct in the township comment form. Typically, in the past, we are starting to change this, but in the past, we have just outlined the parent parcel and then attach the subdivision so that they can see, hey, this is the location, this is the proposed subdivision. A lot of the times that doesn't always work. So now we've started to, as you can see on the map, we have started to have our talented staff outline the proposed lot for those township boards and adjacent adjacent owners.
Okay. Any other questions? What are the wishes of the board?
Sorry to question. I mean, just getting up to speed on the township and their concerns before, did it have to apply with under the purpose of the family? I mean, what was?
But as Rick had stated to me, they're no longer opposed to it because they were assured that it was just for John Ergens.
Because as long as it's under approval for only one residential, they'd have to come back in if they do anything else on it anyway.
Recognize part of the board is we don't always see whole pictures, like approving things and then getting other things later. So that's what I'm just trying to sort through.
We could certainly spell that out. How do you wish to proceed?
At this point, I'll make a motion to approve with staff comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Adam,
Yes.
Sherelle,
Yes.
Shane,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes, motion carries. Sam, before you proceed, I want to go back to the suite or the field application in Beauview Township. There was the question I had was, were there any comments from Beauview Township?
Sorry, which item is that for?
On the,
Oh, Bull Butte. Oh, okay. That's for the variance. Oh,
we went through it so quickly that,
Yeah, we had a comment.
we didn't receive any township comments.
okay, thank you for looking.
So next on the agenda, we just wanted to put a few discussion items. Rachel did some great research on the county comparison for second dwellings. That was a comment that was raised by your commission at the last meeting, so I'll let her take it away.
Yep, so we researched we had our county and then we compared it to 3 other counties on what they do for CUPs or what they do to allow for second dwellings. And it looks like most of them do require a CUP, but some don't, as long as the parcel is over 40 acres. So we just kind of wanted to give you this information to see if, you know, we should look into do something differently for our county, keep it the same. So if you want to take that information and if you have any questions, let us know.
Thanks. And just for further clarification too, so this is we allow an additional dwelling in agricultural, rural residential, urban residential zoning districts. As you all know, this is pretty frequent. This is a frequent item on our agendas. And so Rachel had done some digging into what other counties do. And like she said, conditional use permits are pretty common.
Just a question? Yeah. Going the CUP route, do you know if that would raise any concerns with mortgage companies for, financing a house?
That I don't know, but I could definitely look into that.
So if you do the CUP and you build 2 houses, how do you take the CUP away if there's a house there?
Right. And that was an issue that kind of is what we were looking into. All of the other counties also have blanket CUPs that are attached to owners. So pretty much when you are granted a CUP, it's then tied to the property in this case. I would imagine that if anyone had come forward to us in the future and said, hey, I want to transfer this CUP into my name because I just bought this house on the property, we would have no issue doing it administratively unless there was some violation of the property. But like Rachel was saying, having 2 homes on a property that's over 40 acres is seen in other counties. And as staff, we wouldn't be opposed to that as long as it had an address, all emergency services could access, and we're aware of both houses. That's honestly our main concern and they were both visible from the road. So it's definitely something we can explore drafting an ordinance for.
You got a second, as long as we're on this subject. I guess one that's kind of bothering me is a couple months ago, that young couple from down in Trenton came in, wanted to build on their family's land. And we made them rezone the whole thing to build a county-specified road to come in. But if they'd have called themselves a self-proclaimed farmer, they could have put that anywhere without any kind of road, anything, and done it right? Am I correct on that?
So they wanted to carve out a property. So it was grandma's land. They wanted to carve out 10 acres or whatever for their house. The way they originally approached that is they wanted a donut hole out the 10 acres, and it wasn't attached to any public road. And so we weren't in favor of that lot configuration because let's say grandma sells her remainder piece, then that property in the middle is now landlocked. It doesn't have access to any public roads. That's why we weren't in favor of that lot configuration. We don't really have anything they wouldn't have qualified for our exemption process.
No, but I'm saying, but a big stipulation there was to build the road coming in for them was over $100,000 because they had to build it to county specs and everything else. But if for say, they said they were farming that land and they were a farmer, they wouldn't have to build the road to county specs, they wouldn't have to get permits, they wouldn't have to do anything, correct?
If they weren't subdividing? To keep the 40 acres. Yeah, so then it would be a driveway. Yeah. Sure. Sure. But then that wouldn't be two parcels. Yep, you're right. Yep.
That's what I have a real problem with. A young couple comes in and they gotta spend $150,000 to build a road to county standards. But a farm kid can come in and put a house down anywhere with no stipulations, no roads or anything. But they both can burn down, they both need emergency services. I mean, I know that's the rule, but I guess I'm really having a hard problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah, one would just trigger higher development standards than the other.
That couple
But-
did find a solution to that, though.
They did.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very unfair, after thinking about that meeting, on what they had to go through to build on their grandma's land, to build a road to county standards when another group doesn't have to do it. And the same fire truck has to go to both houses, the same ambulance has to go to both houses. And one can be a cow trail going in, and the other has to be a county road.
But that's related to state law, and state law has some definitions of what a farmer is. You can't just set yourself down and call yourself a farmer.
I realize that.
But the one question I do have, though, they were purchasing that land. So if you're building a residence in the middle of a quarter land, you own all of it at that point. Versus this is a separate parcel, so then landlocked.
Financing is
landlocked
completely different.
brings up a whole different set of parameters.
Right, and most likely the bank would not finance them if they weren't adjacent to a public road. If you don't have access to your property, good lenders would not give you that money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so final item on the agenda is, so this is a request just coming from staff. There is a dog daycare and commercial kennel that was approved back in 2017, and one of their conditions that was placed on just allowing them to operate was that they have to come back for annual renewal every year. That means they have to pay $500 every year after getting approval in the first place. Staff doesn't even check anything. So sometimes when we place that condition, we'll go out and make sure their FFL is in good standing, or we'll make sure they've paid all of their other fines for other state agencies and whatnot. We're not even reviewing anything. And so I think it's an unreasonable request to make them come in for annual renewal. We've never gotten township comment that's been negative, and we've never gotten adjacent owner complaints about this dog daycare. This is located in, let's look really. Yep, in Round Prairie. It's surrounded by all ag. Sherelle
It's
is
just,
familiar.
it's off County 5, about a quarter mile off the road, and on one side of it, there's a trucking company, and there's a house, but it's not close to it.
Yeah, and I'm proposing to leave them alone. If there is complaint in the future, we always have the ability to revoke their conditional use permit, and they have to cease operations. But just to have them come in and pay $500 personally seems unreasonable.
Yeah, we've never had any complaints about them.
This is also just really quick too. The property owner doesn't even know we're requesting this. She's always been on time with payments, always gotten us the information. We're just kind of doing this out of the kindness of our hearts to help her out a little bit, so.
Anything else?
Do you need a motion on that, or is that something you can do administratively?
So we'll take it to the Board of County Commission. We'll have to get a motion from them, but just to have maybe a recommendation from you all, especially you, since you sit on that township board.
Because I would recommend that we do that. I mean, I don't remember why. There was some concern about this from our board, and I don't even remember why. Because our township kind of considered it and approved it to start with.
Yeah, one thing, Sam, can you check if that Busy Bees has got a CUP or how they are zoned for me before the next meeting?
Are they along that 49th?
CUP, or if there's anything we've got, if they're not gonna do anything with controlling the road, see if there's something in our court.
Part of it is, what's all 25, isn't it? At this point, but it's going to go to 25. Nobody goes there. On the part of the revenue. It'll be about a 1 mile stretch before we get there.
Can't we check and see in our CUP when we approved it, if we did our traffic, you know, they were supposed to stay off that road? And see if that was part of the condition. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, we're good.